I found out something that rocked me to my core, that sex addiction is not an evidence-based treatment model. What I realized for me was that there is a net negative in framing your identity around, hi, my name is Craig, and I am a sex addict.
Today's episode starts in a place that most people would rather not talk about, actually. We're talking about shame, secrecy, and the kind of behavior that can slowly hollow out a marriage from the inside. My guest, Craig, knows that world personally. He was a successful attorney, husband, father, and outwardly high-functioning man, but beneath the surface, he was trapped in patterns involving pornography, strip clubs, prostitution, and deep internal conflict. For years, he tried to white knuckle it all and tried all the quote-unquote sex addiction route. Things like therapy, recovery language, and more shame-based accountability. But after hitting his lowest point, which you'll hear about, he discovered something that happened to change everything. What if the label addict was the thing that was actually keeping him stuck? So in this conversation, my guest Craig and I challenged some of the most common assumptions about pornography, compulsive sexual behavior, shame, and healing. We talk about why all this behavior is need-seeking behavior, why shame can both destroy and guide us, and how parts work can help a man stop fighting himself and start leading himself. This episode is honest, challenging, hopeful, and deeply practical. Stay with us. I'm happy to announce that our next couples retreat is coming up soon, and you can get on our waiting list now. The dates are set for April 2027. You'll find those details on our website. This is for couples that have, you would say, we have an overall good marriage. Like, we get along really well, but we just wish when it came to sex and intimacy, there was a little more spark, a little more pizzazz, or things were better when it comes to things in that department. Find all those details at getyourmarriageon.com/events. And you want to get on the waiting list now, because those on the wait list get notified first when registration opens. Craig, welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. How are you today?
I am doing phenomenal. So great to be here, Dan.
Yeah, so tell me about a time in your life when you've either felt ashamed or embarrassed, and maybe something could have gone really wrong, but thankfully maybe it didn't. But tell me about that.
I have sunk to some pretty low places, Dan, and that list is long. But here's one with something that I can look back at now and laugh. So one of the deeply shameful places that I would go to act out was the adult bookstores. They had videos in the back. You could put $1 booth in, $1 bill in the booth, and watch the movies and do, whatever it is guys do, behind closed doors, which is already a really shameful, just a slimy, smelly, disgusting experience. And I remember one time walking out, and you want to get out of there as quickly as possible because the shame is just absolutely crushing, and you do not want anyone to see you to come out of this dark cave of shame. And as I'm walking out, I step on a pile of man goo. And my feet slipped out from underneath me. And just like in a cartoon, my legs are going squeak, 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 squeak. And I finally caught my balance, and it felt like I was spinning for minutes, but I could just picture my body crashing onto the ground and the mess that I was in and how symbolic that would be. But that is one of these moments that I look back on, a little levity, but I know if there's anybody listening now going to those places, it gets pretty dark there. But that is definitely one of many moments that sticks out to me in my addiction.
Thank you. You're obviously very intelligent. You're an attorney, or have been a practicing attorney.
Yep, and still licensed.
Yep, and you've had a midlife career change devoted to helping men understand how to get themselves out of those dark places like you've talked about.
Yes.
It's interesting. We talk about on my podcast eroticism as a life-giving thing, with the root word in Greek being eros, which is it doesn't just mean sexual things, but it's the life force. It's what puts a smile on our face, the pep in your step. And ironically, what you just described seemed like the least life-giving. It seems dark and closed, not open and joyful.
Not
In
at
that little,
all. Not
yet,
at all.
yet for many people, it almost feels compelling, almost compulsive. This draw to the dark, to that shadow. Can you talk more about why you think that is?
Well, let's think about us as men
Mhm.
controlling one of the most powerful forces in human nature. There is
Mhm.
few people who will disagree with that statement, whether they're biologists, psychologists, psychiatrists. We're
Uh-huh.
talking literally about one of the most powerful forces in human nature. And look how most men boys
Uh-huh.
were raised to channel and direct that powerful energy. Most
Mhm.
of us got, I was raised Catholic, sex is dirty and it's disgusting and it's shameful. And you're telling a 7-year-old boy you're going to burn in hell for touching yourself.
Uh-huh.
And it's a great gift from God and it's for your wife and beautiful when you're married. Like it does not compute the
Uh-huh.
shame,
Uh-huh.
the shame and the hiding, Dan.
Uh-huh.
The behavior's its own thing,
Mhm.
but layered underneath that is the shame we learn from a very early age that this is not something that we are supposed to be doing, not something we're supposed to be talking about and asking questions about. There's no mentorship, there's no role models that boys that I had, and certainly none of my clients had.
Mhm.
It was suppressed and mold and fungus and disease,
Uh-huh.
grows in darkness.
Yes.
And so
Uh-huh.
you've got this most powerful force in human nature starting being cloaked with shame and
Uh-huh.
secrets. And that's
Yeah, yeah.
poisonous
How does this shame fuel it and keep it in the dark?
because you're so afraid to talk about it. So you've got a young boy
Uh-huh.
who may be going through stuff like I was as a child, some challenges in my home,
Mhm.
and I had this secret.
Mhm.
And it felt wonderful. It
Mhm.
was my escape. It was
Yeah.
my release. It was
Uh-huh.
my reward. It was my freedom. It was my thing that I had. I had no control over so many aspects of my childhood, but I had this.
Uh-huh. Gotcha.
And I had no one to talk to about it. I was, by any definition, a hyper sexual child.
Uh-huh.
And the fact, Dan, that I had no one to talk about it with led me
Uh-huh.
into befriending an older neighborhood boy who
Uh-huh.
started touching me at a very young age.
Uh-huh.
And I had a priest who's now deceased, killed
Uh-huh.
himself after getting credibly charged with molesting children, groomed me starting at 8, 9 years old. So that part of me, that sexual part of me, was rooted in shame, was twisted, was
Uh-huh.
deviant, was something to be suppressed and to keep secret.
Gotcha. I'm so sorry about that abuse as a child. That's horrible.
It is, and it's happening to more boys now and more girls now because they're
Yeah.
learning on the internet. So dads
Mhm.
and moms listening, you got to be proactive
Yeah.
about this stuff. And thank you for that. And I wouldn't be here. God puts these things in our lives for a reason, Dan,
Uh-huh.
and coming to the deepest lows has also brought me to the highest of highs as I learned to respect and cherish and honor this powerful force, and use it for good and connection and love and joy and pleasure. I wouldn't be here but for those
Mhm.
experiences. So in one way, they were a blessing because now I get to help people.
That's great. So keep going with your story. As a young adult, then what happens?
Yeah, so I always had these two sides of me. I was very successful, I was very bright, always performed very well on tests. There was no doubt there was some grad school in my future, and I became an
Mhm.
attorney. Met my college sweetheart, Michelle, in college at the University of Connecticut. We're still together after a number of my trials and tribulations, but we're happily married now after 27 years. But I'd have this kind of normal part of myself, successful part of myself, and then I'd have this deep, dark, ugly part of myself that went to strip clubs, adult bookstores, eventually gravitated towards prostitution,
Mhm.
hookup sites, like just behavior that The more stressed I got, the worse the behavior got, because that was my coping strategy.
How did it affect your relationship with Michelle?
It devastated it, because I was a liar. I wasn't in integrity. I was directing that powerful energy elsewhere. And in order to do things like I did, and if anybody's listening and struggling with this, you know what I'm talking about. There has to be a narrative that I deserve it. She's not doing this. She didn't do that. Blame. So eventually to justify. And so that narrative, that lens through which I was experiencing a world, was completely immature, was irresponsible, and inaccurate. None of those things were true. My wife might have nagged me because she wanted a decent husband to be home and spend time with and have joy with, and wanted me to be safe. And here I am projecting all this resentment and control onto her. So it created incredible distance in our lives. And anyone knows, right? There's no such thing as a small integrity issue. I had big integrity issues.
And she could sense that, of course.
She could sense that.
Yeah.
She could sense that.
Yet turning to pornography and things like that solved an immediate problem.
Yes,
you alluded it to earlier.
Yes, they did.
Because under that stress, or under that whatever you're going through at the time, we behave in ways that actually, at least in the short term, it solves something. What would that be? Let's just really clear about that.
Yeah, I love that question, because I teach that all behavior is need-seeking behavior. And so for a man coming to me, particularly a faith-based porn addiction program, that's a really difficult pill to swallow for him. What do you mean this behavior is meeting a need? It's helping me regulate stress and anxiety.
Right. Or boredom. Discomfort. Right.
It was my pain pill.
It's like a coping mechanism to deal with the vicissitudes of life.
A coping strategy, a release, a reward. It was safe. I could express myself and do whatever I wanted without judgment or fear. It was safe, and became my security blanket. It was a way to help me regulate a profoundly traumatized and dysregulated central nervous system.
Gotcha. Yet how did that solution to a problem actually maintain the larger problem in place? Like almost guaranteed that bigger problem stayed there.
Yeah, because it works. If you're not using drugs and you're completely dysregulated, you're getting angry, everyone's out to get you, you're a competitor, you're a man, and you're working and can't say no, and grinding as a young associate like I was in the big law firm, and putting in thousands of hours per year to get ahead. Like, this was the only coping strategy I had. This was it. I didn't have any skills. I did some therapy and learned about trauma, and certainly some of that was insightful. But to be quite frank, a lot of it kept me stuck, kept me focusing on the past instead of figuring out, who I needed to be. But it comes it's very natural. Men are wired for variety. Men are wired visually. And that's another tough pill for some people to follow, but the biology confirms it. We are, and absent stewardship, mentorship, fatherhood, guidance, and leadership, that force will run amok. And just look what we're dealing with in society right now.
Great.
We've got a multi-billion-dollar OnlyFans market, AI girlfriend market. We're adding billions on top of that with, young boys and men, grown men having relationships with an AI character today. Like, that's happening. Those are the distractions that we're fighting against today. And here's the thing, Dan. These are men that you might work with, that you see at church. These aren't fringe, broken people living in the bowels of society. Wearing the trench coat.
No,
these are men just like you and me.
I'd say they're good people. They really are.
They're lost. They're lost.
Yeah. Okay. So you realize, hey, I'm an addict, or that's the words that they used, right?
Yep.
Like, I'm addicted to this.
Yep. I go to therapy. They say you're a sex addict.
Yep. Uh-huh.
And
Why does the industry like to coin this behavior as an addiction? Let's talk about that.
yeah, it is a very well-intentioned group of healers that have evolved a treatment modality to call it an addiction, just like the other addictions. I say well-intentioned because I believe there are a lot of great people out there trying to help. And let's face it, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, I'm doing something I can't stop. Addiction.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Addiction.
Right.
And the word isn't necessarily as important, Dan. It's the ideology that comes with the word addiction, instantly evoking 12 steps, Alcoholics Anonymous, sobriety, other concepts that are not the most effective way to treat this problem for many men and women.
Gotcha. That model might make a lot of sense to people, or we might hear that term thrown around, like he's got a porn addiction or whatever. Like in my hometown, I don't know if they're still in business, but there was a company where they bought a house kind of out on the fringes of town. Beautiful place, beautiful location, but they're somewhat off grid. So there's going to be no internet and things like that. So people, mostly men, they come there and they stay for like 2 weeks or a month. And it's their quote unquote detox time because there's no internet, no pornography use as a treatment. And they walk out of there saying, hey, you're cured. You've gone 2 weeks, you've gone a month. You know how to deal with this now. But the relapse rate is very high because you remove them out of a stressful, everyday whirlwind of life situation to kind of like a Garden of Eden experience where there's low temptation or low opportunities for failure. And then when they come back, they didn't quite learn the skills to deal with it in the moment.
Well, and it's a lifetime journey. If we agree that physical health is important, and mental health is important, and spiritual health is important, we have to add to that sexual health, since we're talking about one of the most powerful drivers of human behavior in human beings themselves. And so the notion that I've achieved any element of sobriety then is preposterous and sets these people up to fail. Instead, what I teach clients is, hey, listen, you're going to feel really bad one day. Let me give you an example. My dad just died on March 1st. And let me tell you, I had some pretty crazy thoughts. My clients would forgive me. I got one slip in me, man. I've been such a good boy, right? All these crazy thoughts that I had, but I'm not alarmed. I'm not, oh my God, I'm a bad person. Of course, I'm going to get triggered when I experience a new pain and a great loss that I've never experienced before in my life. We're creatures of habit. So this notion of being able to suppress this and stuff it down, diseasifying this part of you, leaves a lot of men wanting for more wholeness, more, what do I do about it now? And that's really stepping into your power and being a sexually healthy man and building an identity of someone who prioritizes sexual health, because it is so impactful on our mental, physical, and spiritual health. It impacts all three. There aren't everything that impacts all three, not like this one does.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the contrast between an identity of a man in his power who knows in the fiber, has learned through his trials and tribulations that he must be proactive about channeling and directing this energy, versus a man who's an addict, hiding and averting and looking away and looking down, and all of these restrictive, suppressive behaviors that only violate at least one golden rule of behavior modification: that what you resist persists.
So tell me about the experience you had where you stopped calling it a porn addiction and you realized that word or that label no longer serves you and those that you serve.
Yeah, no, I love that. So for almost 2 decades of therapy, I was in treatment for sex addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I get fired from a job back east 16 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
15 years ago, I get a bigger job. I fly out here to California. Company moved me out here, big fat relocation package, national responsibility. I am now an executive with real responsibilities. And within 8 months, I blew a gasket, was acting out with prostitutes and doing some really messed up stuff. And I got fired again, and I tried to hurt myself, and I was hospitalized.
Okay. Wow.
I was hospitalized. So I get out of the hospital. It was a 3-day inpatient. I got out of the hospital, and I got my 8.5 by 11 trifold piece of paper, which said, okay, here's what you're going to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And it said you're going to go to Sex Addicts Anonymous meetings, and you're going to go to more therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan, like, I knew there was no way in hell I was going to do that because I had done that.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And it
I
didn't work
had
for you.
it
Uh-huh.
did not get me where I needed to go. In fact, here I am at my lowest point. So at that lowest point, I started to do some research, and I found out something that rocked me to my core, that sex addiction is not an evidence-based treatment model. It is not
Okay.
approved by the DSM. In fact, it had been rejected by the
Uh-huh.
American Psychiatric Association. I went, wait a minute. I have been in treatment for almost 2 decades, and I did not know that this treatment model had been rejected by the American Psychiatric Association, rejected by other countries, similar boards. The World Health Organization doesn't call it sex addiction. They call it sexually obsessive compulsive disorder, intentionally making that distinction. And so I knew at that low point I had to do something different. And so I found a provider who did not subscribe to the disease-based model, but had been through this himself. Was the first time I started learning practical tools. First time I was exposed to parts work. The first time anyone even suggested I could bring mindfulness, which really interested me, into my practice to be a better person. And so it was like I had a coach who was really practical, giving me, the different levers that I need to pull of capacity to create the capacity so I can be a decent person and be the best man that I can possibly be. So it was at that low point where, I mean, listen, if you go back to listen to some of my old podcasts, I'm a little embarrassed the way that I would bash the model. How dare these therapists violate their legal and ethical obligation? And listen, and a lot of your patients now, if they're going to see a therapist using this model, there's a consent form that says, hey, just so you know, this is not approved by the APA.
Okay.
Right. And so
that was your soapbox at the time.
That was and it was disrespectful to people who got value in the model. It was disrespectful. Heck, I charge people. The model is free, and you certainly can't beat that. And there are so many benefits of the model, the recognizing that you need help, embracing community, bringing people closer to their faith. So many benefits. But what I realized for me, Dan, and what is true for all of my clients, was that there is a net negative in basing your identity, framing your identity around, hi, my name is Craig and I am a sex addict.
Okay.
There is no other place in self-help. Hey, my name's Craig. I'm a filthy freaking liar. Hey, my name is Craig. I eat too much. Right? It just doesn't resonate from an identity perspective. And I think that I, think about, the guys in the relationship. Hey, your wife, did you go to your sex addiction classes? Did you do your sex addiction? Did you get turned on today? Did you see anything you shouldn't have seen? It turns the wives into detectives. It has a man living in reactive land. And it turns him into a stinking liar. Hey, did you see anything triggering today? No, honey. Nothing? Nothing? Like not a, nothing? You didn't, your eyes didn't notice anything? And so it's the anchoring to the disease-based identity is actually harmful for some people. The power dynamic, Dan, that it creates in the relationship is unhealthy, not just for the man, but is also unhealthy for his partner. And she should not be put, in that role as his caretaker and his checker up on her.
Right.
And none of that produces the ultimate goal, which has to be healthy sexuality and integrity.
It's got to come from the inside out, not from the outside in.
Not from the outside in,
Right.
but from the inside out. There has to be an identity shift where I respect my sexual energy. I am a man of integrity. I appreciate its power, and I am going to be vigilant in protecting that power. And that includes the little things too, like the titillating ads. Like I just don't do it. Like I don't want that in my body. I don't like high fructose corn syrup in my body. I'm 54 years old. I'm 170 pounds, the best shape of my life. I do not want that in my body because I know where it goes. I know where it goes. I don't have any doubt in my mind that I would fall back to all of my old patterns if I didn't keep doing the things that make me successful.
Yeah.
So I'm done with never again.
You told me prior to recording, you had this insightful conversation with Dr. Robert Glover. He's written a popular book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And in this conversation, you learned something emasculating about certain terms we tend to use.
Yeah.
Now, of course, respect to those that have seen a lot of success or help calling it a pornography addiction or sex addiction. But your insight, tell me about your insight on that.
So I had Dr. Robert Glover on my podcast, and my podcast used to be named Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. Okay, Dan, I went directly for the SEO, sex addictions and porn addictions.
Yep.
And I have always been a vocal advocate of alternative methods. But Dr. Robert Glover said something on that podcast. And so for you guys who are listening, one, No More Mr. Nice Guy should be mandatory reading for you people pleasers out there. In his book, he touts the benefits of the sex addiction model. And I asked him in the interview, do you still hold those beliefs? And he said something that completely resulted in a significant change in my business and in my podcast. He says, the model is great short-term, long-term, it's emasculating.
Okay.
So this is like the godfather of men's health, written that legendary book, calling the model emasculating. And what the words he gave me, Dan, in that moment captured. I've talked about the corrosive power dynamic. I've talked about how it keeps men out of their power and anchored to their worst part of themselves. I had all those conversations, almost academic, like evidence-based critiques of the model, and that word emasculating captured so much of mine and my clients' experience with the model. And so the more sex addiction you tend to go, the more religious it tends to be. And the more emasculated that those men are. Polygraphs every 6 months, just really things that aren't ultimately building a trustful relationship. And, and I asked the wives, do you want a husband who identifies as a sex addict, or do you want a man who's learned from his mistakes and stepped into his power and is moved beyond that label? I think I know the end. Well, there's maybe a few. And you can work on that. I invite you to challenge yourself there. But no, they don't want that. They don't want that.
So what I hear you say, my interpretation of what you're saying is this. It's like, if I had a bad habit, and if I could call it an addiction, it almost means I'm dissolved of responsibility because it's my addiction that does this. It's like my disease that does. It's like a problem. We've pathologized it.
Yes.
It's now external to me. Whereas what you're talking about is bringing back agency. It's, I have a choice here. I have power here. I'm not completely powerless to this.
Yes.
By
Yes.
God's grace and tools that are helpful in everything, I can gain the strength and power, to become better at handling this power. But it puts the focus back within me, like the power is back in me, not outside of me.
Yes, it's growing from a place of strength on the inside versus calling your condition disease, right? Because that's what it
Mm-hmm.
is in 12. So you have a disease. And
Mm-hmm.
for my Christian brothers listening, right, not only is that a disease, that's the demon. That's where the devil takes root, and that's where he takes over. And what they do is they demonize that addict part. They
Mm-hmm.
diseasify that part,
Yeah.
which is the same part trying to help them deal with stress, help them escape, help them be sexually fulfilled. Whatever it is, it's meeting a need.
Mm-hmm.
And so by diseasifying that broken, wounded parts of you that needs, what would Jesus do if he walked by that addict part on the side of the road? Puh, you filthy animal. That was even sacrilege to even
Uh-huh.
suggest. Because it's preposterous to suggest, because the answer is no. He
Mm-hmm.
would lead that part. He would love that
Yeah.
part. And surprise, surprise, that's the solution.
Uh,
That's the solution. Self-leadership and self-love is the solution to this problem.
you've also talked about parts work a little bit. Maybe my listeners have never heard of that before. Give me a quick overview of that.
Gosh, quick overview of parts work is any of you have seen the Pixar movie Inside Out?
Uh-huh.
That
One
was
of
the
my
movie,
favorites.
yep, where they had the characters in the teenage girl's brain. There was anger, anxiety, embarrassment, etc.
Uh-huh.
And those characters are essentially parts. That's based on part modular mind theory and part like an internal family systems model influence. And let me
Mm-hmm.
just break it down. For the man who's struggling with porn addiction and sex addiction, there is a part of you that has very different values and beliefs than this other part of you that wants to be the best person possible, right? There is this conflict. And the
Mm-hmm.
way that conflict is often presented in the disease-based model, Dan, it's the angel, it's the devil. We go to the angel and suppress and kill the devil.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. But there's a reality that this part has been trained over many, many years to meet needs of escape, pleasure, release, reward. It's a coping strategy. At its core, it is a coping strategy. And
Mm-hmm.
so in traditional recovery, we demonize and diseasify that part. In parts work, we get curious about it and try to understand it. And ultimately, through that understanding, lead it and love it and support it. When is a monster not a monster? Oh, when you love it.
Okay. Good.
And so the wonderful book on parts work from a Christian perspective was written by Jenna Remersma. And the name of the book is Altogether You. And it basically says that there is a center and a core in that we all have inside us. And the science version of that is called the self. Gestalt had a name for it. Carl Jung had a name for it.
Mm-hmm.
As I was raised a Catholic, that's the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
Right. Uh-huh.
So we all have this leader, this boss, this godly image inside all of us. And that is the center of the operating system and leads and loves these angry part, shame part, liar part to positive outcomes. And it dramatically reduces the friction and the infighting and the scolding and the yelling and the it just when you truly understand the behaviors that you are labeled bad
Mm-hmm.
are behaviors that have been trained over a lifetime and beyond to meet needs, it completely changes the internal dynamic.
So it's less about shaming the parts of you that you've labeled bad, but it's learning how to shepherd and lead and guide the different parts of you
Correct.
towards goodness, whatever that
Correct.
goodness.
Correct.
That's good. Which requires self-leadership.
Well,
A lot of
and
self-compassion, a lot of patience, a lot of learning,
a lot of love, a lot of
a lot of
emotional
grace.
regulation, a lot of grace,
Uh-huh.
all principles your listeners are very familiar with. And, let's take the shame part, right? In traditional therapy, and, shame is bad, guilt is good. Shame
Uh-huh.
means I am bad, guilt means I did something bad. I get all that, but let me just pose this for a second, okay? What is that shame part trying to accomplish? It's trying to keep us on the straight and narrow.
Uh-huh.
It's an
It's gonna
evolutionary
protect us. Yeah.
wired trait to protect us from doing things that ultimately could have resulted in the old days of getting kicked out of the tribe, which resulted in death.
Yep. Yes.
So this shame part that so many people want to hate and want to shame and belittle, one,
Uh-huh.
it's a biology thing and it's in all of us, but who would you be without it?
Yeah.
What would your life look like if you did not have that shame part? We'd be like Lord of the Flies, man.
Uh-huh. There's
We
healthy shame, I guess is what you're trying to say. Uh-huh.
Yes,
Guardrails. Uh-huh.
that part is my moral compass. That is my
Uh-huh.
ethical advisor.
Yes.
That
Uh-huh.
is that those are my guidelines. I want that part.
Right.
But so many people hate it, want to get rid of it, but they truly don't understand. Again, back to the premise, all behavior is need-seeking behavior, including the behaviors you hate.
That's good. And pandering to the shame, that means living your life, controlled by the shame. That's not healthy.
No.
And then saying I'm completely shame-free and having zero shame, zero conscious. That's not a healthy way of living either.
No.
So the truth is kind of resolving that paradox is what
Correct. And that's what parts work does. It takes that paradox of the, angel who doesn't want to do the bad things and the devil who wants to do all these bad things. When is a monster not a monster? Oh, when you love it, from my favorite poem by Catherine Seal. Because it speaks to me so much, because I hated my addict part for years. I tried to kill him, and I actually did try to hurt myself at my lowest point. Everything changed when I took all that trauma work that I did over here and said, wait a minute, addict part, that's what you experienced. That's where you came from. That's where you learned how to act like this and how you learned to lie and keep secrets and feel shame and have an incredible ability to compartmentalize and do all these terrible things and walk home and say, hey, everybody, daddy's home, right? Like, I understood that part from a so much different perspective, and that understanding allowed me to lead it, to love it. It softens, it heals, occasionally flares up, like recently when my dad died, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That part's telling me I need something right now. I better call somebody. I better reach out to a friend. I better make some extra time to spend with my wife and connect or pray and meditate. It's a call to action versus a call to shame.
I love that. It's taking that agency back. You're claiming that again.
Yes.
That's so good. This has been such a great conversation, Craig. Where can people go to learn more about what you do?
Sure. They can visit mindfulhabithelp.com. I have a free training called The 6 Transformational Truths that changed everything for me. So if you're hearing something that says, wait, that sounds crazy, did you just say all behaviors need-seeking behavior? Listen to the training. I'll explain it in a lot more detail. You'll get it. You'll see why what you might be doing is actually holding you back and even possibly give you a new way forward.
That's so good. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening. This was quite a raw episode, wasn't it? Some big things that stuck out to me is just how much shame can really hollow out a person. Also, how the language we use, such as labeling ourselves as an addict, can sometimes limit our ability to actually overcome, and how important it is to really go deep inside ourselves and understand that sometimes our behavior, even the destructive behavior, is trying to solve something, even though it's not solving it very well. It keeps the bigger problem in place. So understanding where those motives come and understanding that better is really the key to unlocking your next level so you don't have to live in that low-level shame anymore. I hope this episode has been helpful for you or someone that you know. Please share this podcast with your friends and go get your marriage on.